restraint by public bodies on what might be perceived as non-essential spending, in other words, doing more with less. And thirdly, motivation and encouragement and development of current council staff. Now, we're planning to deliver all of those already through our work program as set out in the Statement of Intent. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. I obviously wish that I could have spoken with you in person, but no doubt that opportunity will arise sometime shortly in the future. Kelvin and I are more than happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair, but I wondered, Kelvin, if there is any additional points that you wanted to make.
No, well covered, Peter. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Yeah, as you mentioned, LAS has been active in our between our councils for a number of years now, and been very successful, particularly with RATA, the roading accord. But what's happening now is an absolute step change, and I totally agree with what you said about it being more important post-COVID rather than less. So, yeah, I wish you every success, of course. Now, questions. I think Claire, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And great to meet you via Zoom, Peter, and it's good to see you too, Kelvin. I did send through some questions, but two are ones that I'd just like to ask in this forum. The first one is that, you've made a strong case for continuing how you're going at the moment, that all those things that you're focusing on will be more important than ever when we're dealing in the post-COVID era, I guess. But a lot of the things that are done rely on the, I suppose, the goodwill of councils and releasing resources from their business to work on LAS stuff. And I can foresee that councils are actually going to be pretty hard pressed with their own staffing resources, dealing with extra things that have come out of the woodwork to do with COVID-19. And so, what assurance can you give us that you won't sort of find yourself high and dry, that you can't get the sort of resource that you do need, from the individual councils that have normally been really supportive, because their staff are just completely committed, to this other work.
Kelvin, would you mind if I answered that question first, and then
sure,
maybe there's a few additional points you want to make? I think, Councillor, thank you. That's a great question. The good news is we had, I'm happy to say, thought of that as well. And one of the earliest things that we did well before lockdown was when we could see this thing coming, was to reach out to councils to ask them to think about whether, in the context of any redeployment of assets and people that they were doing, whether there were going to be some people that might in fact be freed up to be able to work on some of our projects to make them go faster. And I was pleasantly surprised, particularly from some of the smaller councils, to be honest, about the positive response that we got in terms of offering up staff. That's the first point. The second point is that more specifically, Kelvin's been in touch with the chief executives of all of the councils, I think as recently as yesterday, Kelvin, where we've set out some specific skill sets that we're looking for in order to be able to advance some of our strategic projects. So, as I say, a great question. Surprisingly positive response from the councils that we've reached out to, but you're absolutely right. The resourcing issue may ebb and flow over time, and it's something we're acutely conscious of. Kelvin, did you have any points to add?
Look, I think that sort of covers it all off, Peter, to be honest. Got nothing.
Well, that's really encouraging, actually. Yeah. It's good to get excuse me, it's good to get that clarification. That's great. And the other question I had was about the energy and carbon management that's mentioned in the SOI here. I wasn't sure whether that is the carbon audit that our councillors sort of before the last election, that was one of the directions that we gave staff, that we wanted to get something organised in that which would help us I suppose, formulate a plan, for climate change and that. And is the energy management that's mentioned that LAS does, is that feeding into that audit or not?
So look, the short answer is, Councillor, that no, it's certainly not the audit that you're referring to. I don't see any particular reason why the people that we engage to provide that support to councils could not help with that audit if that was something that the Waipa executive team were interested in doing. But I'm not actually privy to the status of the particular piece of work that you're referring to. I know that Martin Lynch, who's one of the guys that tends to work with Waipa District Council, has been doing some bespoke work in this area, but I'm not sure whether it specifically relates to that report that you're referring to.
Okay. Oh well. Thanks for the clarification. That's
Okay. Any more questions?